This story begins in the winter of 1999, when I received a package of letters from Steve Griggs and his sister Dianne in New Jersey.
The man I was raised to believe was my father did commit numerous crimes. He was a thief, a liar, a rapist, a sadistic torturer, and a murderer. He practiced all of these things on his wife and children.
They claimed that 40 years ago, as young children, they went on journeys with their father and witnessed him committing murders.
A lot of them looked at me just before they died. They wondered if we had helped to lure them into this position where they were about to lose their life.
Could any of these allegations be true? This film tells the story of an extraordinary phenomenon. Police in several states, a county prosecutor and his detectives, and myself, an investigative filmmaker, all get drawn into a mystery of horrific memories, but a puzzling lack of hard evidence, and a father, accused of being a serial killer, who denies everything.
I do not need proof that this really happened. I lived it. I lived a piece of it every day, and I will continue to live it for the rest of my life.
One of the most pitiful sights I've ever seen is this idiot trying to drag two dead men through the rain and 6-inch deep mud, slipping and falling, cursing in the rain. That's my dad.
I have a portrait on my wall. He's a serial killer.
The first time I set out to meet Steve and Dianne, I was torn. Their letters told a story that seemed unbelievable, but it was hard to deny the emotions behind their words. I set off with my film crew to New Jersey to find out more. First stop was Steve's place, where he lives with his wife Anne-Marie and runs a fencing business from his house. Steve began by telling me how 4 years ago, after his mother died, he started to remember that he'd been sexually abused by his father.
I figured, hey, I've been abused. I've been really treated badly. This has been messing me up. I want to be a better husband to my wife. I'm not going to let anything stand in the way of that. So I'll find a psychologist who deals with this, and I'll get this out of the way. It took 3 weeks, and I started remembering the murders.
Steve's sister Dianne is a widow who lives just a few miles from Steve with her teenage daughter.
What triggered the memories of the killings?
Stephen said that he remembered that my father had killed somebody, and when he said that, it was as if he said, I remembered Dad bought a new car. It wasn't, I wasn't shocked, I wasn't startled, and I just listened to what he had to say, and then things started to come back for me. I could be standing in a supermarket, I could be watching television, I could be sleeping, and it would come back to me. And I started to remember, and the first thing I remembered was about the bag under the house. And Stephen comes over to me and he whispers in my ear, there's a lady in the bag.
Steve told his mother about the body.
And then he said to her, I felt her leg. It's shaved. Well, when my father came home, she starts yelling and raging at him, whatever it is, get it out from under the house.
My initial reaction on hearing that their memories surfaced so recently is to wonder how we can trust them. Dr. Laurie Mader is a criminologist who's investigated repressed memory.
Stephen and Dianne have very intricate stories. There may be elements of truth to that. I have trouble believing that all the details are as accurate as they say. They were young when these things happened, and if they separated themselves psychologically from the incidents, then how can they remember the most minute details?
And what does the prosecutor in New Jersey, who is coordinating this investigation, make of it all?
The allegations that we have before us are serious allegations, if true. And we assigned Detective John Diet from our office to interview Mr. Griggs, take his information, and follow it up. Because, again, in regards to the detail he provided, to us, it had a ring of credibility. And a person who engaged in that activity would be a truly evil person. And certainly, from our perspective, it would be a person that we would want to bring to justice.
The problem is that he has been getting rid of evidence all his life, all of this. When we would go down to visit our grandmother, we had to stop at garbage cans off of the turnpike in the parkway. He would always have a bag or two that he had to throw away along the way.
This is the steps going down into the basement. He's dug, he's filled in, he's built walls, torn the walls down, tunneled. Sure enough, I found he had broken through the foundation, cut a door through the foundation, and dug another room. Instead of writing, I just called the police, and I told them, look, he's dug a room in his basement. I know this guy. I know what that room is for. Now he's staking himself out around the neighborhood. Somebody's got to do something. His wife is gone. My brother's in California. He's all alone. What's going to happen is you're going to wind up with a dead boy in the weeds, and it's going to be in your town.
Most of Steve and Dianne's memories relate to the early 1960s, when they were young children. In 1959, their father, a veteran of World War II, was working at the Fort Devens Army base close to the town of Ayer in Massachusetts. He was a sergeant and worked as a cook in the mess hall on the base. They say that one afternoon in 1960, he took the son of another cook on a picnic, an African-American boy whose name was Jimmy. He was also Dianne's friend.
My father asked Jimmy if he wants to drive the car. You know, Jimmy's like real excited about this. He's real excited about the car, and my father gets him in the car, and he makes it so that Jimmy's sitting behind the wheel, but he's got his foot on the gas and his hand, and he's shifting, and you know, it's like Jimmy's a little kid. He's driving, and then he says, okay, now you're going to have to pay for driving the car. And Jimmy's like, well, I don't have any money. How am I going to pay for it? And I could hear that glove compartment open when Jimmy started to cry. It's hurt, you're hurting me, you're hurting me. And he opened the glove compartment because he always kept a tube of Vaseline in there. And he took the Vaseline out, and then he says, does that feel better? Is that better? You like this, you like this, you know you like this.
This place has come back to me in my dreams, in my nightmares, and for years and years, it just came back so much, and I could never place it. My dad parked right about here, and took Jimmy and put him into this brick pump house.
My father puts on this really deep, evil, mean voice, and he says to him, your father doesn't care about you. Your father says to do anything I want with you. He doesn't care about you. He doesn't care if you die. And Jimmy just really starts screaming. Then he starts hitting Steve and messing with his head and pushing him around, and he hands him a knife and he tells him to attack Jimmy. And he just keeps telling me, he's trying to hurt his sister. He's going to hurt all of us. He's going to hurt your family. Pretty soon Steven he can't do anything, but he just like strikes out at him, and it hits Jimmy in the shoulder back here. The knife hits him, and he's shocked, and he's backed off. And why did you do that to me? What? Steven's like, no, I can't do this. And so my father grabs him, and he says, you won't do it. Well, I'll do it. I'll take care of it. If you can't take care of your sister and protect your mother and your family. And he drags him over, and he picks him up, and he throws him down into this hole with water in it. And he's screaming, and you can hear the water rushing. And then he looks at me, and he says, do you want to trade places with him? Do you want to be the one in the well? Do you want to be the one to die? Because one of you's got to die. There wasn't anything that I could do about it. And we drove off, and whether he was still alive or not, I can still hear that little boy screaming.
Listening to their account, No one I've met on this investigation doubts that Steve and Dianne believe they witnessed Jimmy's murder 40 years ago. But their word alone is not enough to convince the authorities. They need corroboration. 40 years ago, not every child that went missing was reported to the police, and many police files from that time have been lost or destroyed. Steve and Dianne are determined to find proof that Jimmy lived and died, but their memories are hazy after 40 years. They do not even know Jimmy's last name or which house he lived in.
How do you know how to make your next move? There's no rule, there's no class to take, there's nothing to follow, so you're going by your gut instincts and this driving, motivating force. It's got to be up back in this section, one of these 3 streets.
We're trying to zero in on any members of the black community that might remember this boy's name. We think his first name was Jimmy.
His grandmother lived in town, so we figured the best place to look was the churches.
And were you associated with the...
Yes, I knew the little boy. I was there the day that he was murdered. But because we have such limited information, we don't have a name. Because we're looking for a particular cook. We don't know his name, but he was a black man. He was quite big, maybe from the South.
We checked out the addresses and names that Steve and Dianne came up with, and checked through military records, and have yet to find any evidence of Jimmy's family's existence at Fort Devens in the early 1960s. But Sergeant Mark Coulter of the Air Township Police also checked out Steve Griggs' account of Jimmy's story.
Are there 2 pump houses down there? Yes, there are. Was there a well there? I wasn't aware there was, but when we checked, we did find a well adjacent to it. We looked in the well, didn't find any evidence of clothing or anything of that type. So, bottom line to his information, his description of the areas and the maps that he drew are absolute. He is right on target with the locations and what's there and what used to be there. But checking those areas, we still came up with nothing to prove his stories.
If one person sits somewhere who has not been through what we have been through and says, well, right here, proves if you can get this wrong, then you could get everything wrong. But they didn't sit. They didn't sit in the back seat of that car. They didn't sit outside that well. They weren't sitting there or standing there when these things happened. And we were.
Hi, how you doing? How are you? Hi.
Air is the nearest town to Fort Devens. Steve and Dianne have an appointment to see the police chief.
Here's a map that pinpoints several murders my father committed, and this is the way he was spreading them out. All these people are dead. I saw it and have the article.
Okay, well, what about the people in air? There are articles there are people missing.
Right.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Okay, but my interest is in air.
Right.
So you have, half a dozen or so alleged murders, and we have nobody missing, no bodies, no physical evidence that this occurred. He killed a little black boy. We don't have a missing black boy. That's where we are with this right now. Would love to be able to help you and find some of these people that were murdered, but we haven't discovered anything yet that would lead us to believe that any of these things happened.